they would put it down and put it down in with the first side out, and they would sew around the edges and cut the remaining edges to use and cut as a rope. And so they made use of everything on that buffalo. They never let anything spoil. And these hoofs, they would cut them off and use them too for buttons or, games or whatever they use it for, they put it aside. And the bones, they used the bones they kind of cracked them and they used them for tanning utensils. And the marrow of the bones, they would put them together to use as for their hair or for pemmican, or they have uses for them, the marrow. And then from the hoofs, they would take all the inside and all the tendons, or they would take I forgot the name of that. Anyway, they boiled that and they made that into glue. Nowadays they have glue to glue things together. Well, they made glue out of this when they made new tents. They sewed the tents, and with a bone and the sinew, they would sew the tents, and then they would take this glue and put it over it, and there were no rain would go into the tents, tipis. They used the hide for that purpose. Some hides they would tan for the soles of the moccasins, and the thinner parts of the hide they would use for moccasin tops, and for gloves, for mittens, and they made robes out of the buffalo hide, and they used the meat for pemmican and for jerky purposes. And the insides, they even saved that too. They would boil it and cut it up and dry it. Some they ate fresh, some they dried for the winter. They were always looking forward for the winter months, and so they saved. The hides, some of them they made pemmican holders or suitcases, they call them nowadays, but they had little boxes they made out of them to carry things in. They call parflex. They made those, some hides that were kind of thin, they used that. But the thicker ones they used for tents. So when they're good tanners, they tan hides accordingly, what purpose they're going to make into. And that's the reason why they travel. They followed the buffalo herd. They followed the elk herd or the deer herd or the moose. And they would have certain roads that they travel near the river or near the creeks that they traveled, where they can water their animals and where they had good grazing. And each band and each tribe that traveled had their own markings. They would have little signs on the trees that this band here of Indians, like nowadays we know Sitting Bull. So he would leave their mark, a Sitting Bull's clan passed this way. He'd have a different sign on the tree, and they would respect one another. And if they went ahead of them, they would go another direction. And these are the roads that they used, and they considered their roads a holy road because they followed the herds to feed the people, and the herds to clothe the people and to make ropes and to make all kinds of things they made. And then there's times that they travel along the rivers to get porcupines. Certain time of the year that they kill the porcupines, and they use the hair for the winter months. They killed the porcupine because their hair was long, and they'd pull that certain part of the porcupine hair to make the headdress when they would dance in the spring or in the summer. And then they would use the porcupine quill because in them days there was no such a thing as beads. So they would use the porcupine quill and pull just certain parts out. The tail part of the porcupine quill was always a thick and kind of a short and thick porcupine quill, and they never used that. But they used the back part of it because they were kind of thin and they were pliable. When you're going to use porcupine design work on any kind of a buckskin, you would have to get these things sometimes in the summer, sometimes in the winter. And they followed these trails. And they considered a holy trail because God provided for them. And they would ask and they would pray and they would know which direction to take in order to reap the harvest of the wild animals and creatures and the sweet grass. In the spring, they would look for sweet grass, and they would find it in certain areas. And then just before the Mandans used to make fish corrals and to harvest the fish to plant corn, because fish was a good fertilizer for their corn and their squash. And so the Indians looked to God's creation for everything, for their clothes and so they didn't stay in just one place. Nowadays, they call us nomads, but we weren't nomads. We honored the Creator, and He, to provide everything for us, we look to Him, and He guides us and He directs us in all these trails from the southern part to the northern part of this North American continent. They would travel, and so that's why they travel all over. We consider this a holy turtle island, they called it. It's a floating island, but it's a place where God created us all to love and to honor and to cherish the Mother Earth, and to look unto God, the Creator of us all. So this is why they always prayed for guidance, and He would direct them in what route to take, what trail to take. And if all the tribes got together, they could never get what just one tribe would get, So they honored one another, tribe, to go to one area to reap whatever they prayed for. We couldn't all get together and go up and down this Missouri or the Mississippi or any place, but we all we had bands and tribes to go here and there, and that's what we called. Some of them are Tetons, Yanktonnai, and Sisseton, and Makato, and all that. We have bands of Indians, tribes that we travel, but they honored one another. the crows would go certain, they would have the elk and the buffaloes and the Sioux, they would go. But at the same time, they would harvest from this great continent, this great earth that God put us on. It's God created the tipis, the wild berries and the wild onions and everything that grew that they made use of. They followed, they made trails to go at certain time of the year. And they didn't go all the time just through one trail, but they would go up, and when they almost done? No? No? Oh. So they would go up one route, and then a certain time of the year, they knew, they counted the moon, how far they could go. And then when they, that certain moon that they were supposed to return, they would return again. They would turn around and come back.
I'm sorry, he was right. It just ended.
Oh.
Are you trying to tell me that?
We're rolling. Anytime.
Okay, it's on.
Is this on too?
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right. The moon is like now, this calendar year is 30 days or 31 days in one moon. And the Dakota, whatever, the tribe would count the moons on how many, how many days they traveled and how many days it's going to travel to get back to where their winter camp was. And so that's the reason why I mentioned the moon. And then as they go along to hunt for food, same time they would gather the herbs that was needed throughout the winter months. Like a certain time, they gathered the onions. We had wild prairie onions, they're little ones, but they also dried those and kept them for seasonings. And then along the river, they had the big onions they call pshintanka. And they would harvest those too at a certain time of the year, and then they would keep them. But they were kind of in the fall of the year. They would harvest the onions, and on the box elder trees, they would harvest the mushrooms in the fall of the year. But in the summer months, they would harvest like along here. They would harvest this sweetgrass in different creeks. They smelled good, and their sweetgrass is used to smudge. Like if my grandfather told me that if a great storm was coming in the winter months as well as the summer months, a great big storm was coming, and they knew it was coming in their direction. The prayer warriors, the prayer people, are the ones that they would smudge, and they would tell the children to get into the tents and lay down and pray. And the rest of the people, they would all get into their tents or tipis. And then these prayer people would smudge, and they would pray, and the Great Spirit would listen to them, because they use, nowadays you go in a Catholic church, they use some kind of a sweet smelling leaves or whatever, it smells good. Well, in them days they used the sweetgrass, and they smudge, and they would use that for the weather. And then, of course, the lowly sage that they use in them days, those great big sage, long big leaves, one strand. It goes straight up like this. I'm not talking about the branched off leaves of so-called sage, but it isn't. That sage came from across someplace. Somebody brought it over and introduced it here. But our sage in this continent is just a one stem like that with a large leaves on there. They would harvest that. And that sage is good for a lot of purposes. If it wasn't for the lowly sage, my feet would have been cut off. But in 1949, I stepped into some hot coals and burnt my feet. And when they took me to the hospital, this is just a personal testimony on what the lowly sage did for me. The PHS hospital in Fort Yates here kept me for 3 whole months from June, July, and August. They were going to cut my feet off because my feet turned to gangrene. They kept giving me shots of penicillin every 4 hours, and they would just put a Vaseline on my feet. And so my mother, she's still alive, Lillian Martinez, she took me out of the hospital and took me back to my home. I had 4 children, and she argued the doctors and told them she was taking me. They took me home on a Friday night. Well, the doctors signed a complaint against my husband, Samson Two Shields, at the time, and they were going to put him in jail because he disobeyed and took me out of the hospital when they were going to amputate my feet. Well, my mother took me home, and she had picked a lot of these sagebrush, and not sagebrush, but the sage, the true sage. She picked the petals out, and she boiled them. She boiled a big pot of sage, and when she got me back, she took that cooled off sage, and she washed my feet with it. And then she took some ichach behu and boipie, they call it. I don't know how to interpret them, but they call it kind of a purple cone flower. The root of it, that's an Indian anesthetic. It deadens the nerves, it deadens it up. If you have pain someplace, you chew that up and put it on even your mouth is going to get dead. Well, she chewed that up, and then that boipia, they call, I don't know how to translate that, but when there's any swelling or any infection, you chew that up and put it on. They put that on my feet as a kind of a poultice, and they wrapped it up Friday night. And the next morning, Saturday morning, they took that poultice off, and the skin of my feet, there was no skin. There was just nothing but flesh and pus and everything, blooding coming out of it. Well, that stopped, and there was just kind of a film over it. Well, she done the same thing again. She washed it with the lowly sage, and then she put the poultice on, and then she put it on again on my feet, and I slept. Without taking pain pills of any kind, I slept through the night, and the next day she put another one on. And on Monday morning, when the police came to take my husband to jail, and my little mama, she went to the policeman, and she said, before you take this man, my son-in-law, to jail, you take me because I'm the instigator. And then she turned to the doctors and she said, before you take my husband or my daughter to get her feet amputated, you take a look at this. As she took that poultice off, they looked at it. There was nothing wrong with my feet. I had skin over it. And so these are the herbs that are picked at certain times of the year. Like these ichachbehu, you can even dig it in the winter time if you need it. But in the fall of the year, they would dig it, and in the boipia, that one too, you can dig it in the fall of the year. That's when they're the largest, and they're really strong then. So this is how they traveled. The tribes would travel when the times of the season, when they're going to get the herbs that's going to benefit the tribe. And then the ones that harvest it, they would keep it. And but if some people in the tribe would need it, they would give it to them, you know. And whatever the one that receives it, whatever they think it's worth, they would give it to the medicine people. Like nowadays, you go to the clinics, and when the doctor prescribes some medication, you're going to have to buy it. Well, us Indians, we don't do that. We trade for everything that we need, or we either trade or we give it to one another. So that's our Indian way. It's a good way to help one another. And like Sisitwa people, they live along the lakes of Minnesota and North and South Dakota. In that area, there's a lot of lakes, and they call it the muskrat medicine, because the muskrats eat that medicine that grows down inside of the lake, way down the people has to dive for the roots. And it's just like my uncle from over Sisseton, he dives, and he used to dive in there takes a sharp knife, and he would go down and cut a large area, and he would bring it up, and they would wash it and dry it. And that's, they call it, it's a muskrat medicine, and it's good for colds and good for the breath, you know, like somebody's short of breath and can't breathe. I don't know what they call it now. What is that now? That breathing disorder? Asthma. Yeah, they use that for that too. So they would trade, you know. Our people would go and they would trade for their muskrat medicine and our boipie or pejuta tanka, whatever we have, we trade. And of course, in them days, they never had, we don't know what money is. And so we trade for what we have in abundance. We trade with one another, and we tell one another what it's being used for. And then sometimes, too, along the river we go, there's these bees, wild bees. They have places where they make their homes, and they save honey. Sometimes we ask the bees to give us some of that sweet, and from the syrup of our box elder tree, they drill holes and they get them out. They have the syrup in bags. They used to give the honey to the bees so they can use that instead of honey, and then we would use the honey for our sweetener too sometimes. That's when we find honeybees. And then there's some grass that that along the rivers or these what do you call these clay buttes or pahashdashda they call them, a hill that's nothing can grow on, but there's some look like weeds. They grow. They're straight up like this, and they're kind of they call it licorice in English, but my people they call it a sweet weed, and they kind of use that for candy. When you cut them and then you kind of skin them and then when you suck on them, it tastes like licorice. It tastes good. Here I was reading in a paper that they use that licorice is good. If you eat it all the time, it helps. It cures cancer. They found that out lately. But in our days, that's what we ate as growing up. When we want candy, we'd cut them weeds, and it was kind of a licorice tasting or sweet. And there's many other things that different times and seasons of the year they would travel, but they would travel to harvest from this great garden of God here on this earth. And so we were taught to respect even the tipsina that we harvested in the month of May and June. Nowadays they just take it and they just cut the stem and throw it away. But in our times, my grandfather would say, when you go around that little plant like this, he said, pull it, that whole lump of dirt, pull it up, and just cut the tipsina, the Indian turnip out. Cut that off and then put that stem back and leave that stem going, because that little stem and that dirt, that Mother Earth there, it's a holy earth, so it gives life. So it's going to give life to this plant that's without the tipsina. It's that that earth is going to give life to this stem without a root, and it'll form the seeds on the flowers, and then when the wind comes, it'll scatter that seeds, and again we'll have some more tipsina. So these things we learned from our elders to do. But nowadays I see that they just cut them the stem part and just throw it away, when they could be stuck back into the ground and they could flourish. The flower would turn into seed and they could blow and then grow some more tipsina. And there's certain times, that's just through the month of May and June. After that, the stem is blown away. And so these are just some of the herbs of this earth that we use as food and medicine. So we go according to the moons, and we harvest certain things that is needed throughout this winter that we're going to go through. Grandmother always say, we don't know what their winter is going to be like. But sometimes I don't know what kind of animal they always butcher, and they can tell what kind of a winter it's going to be. It foretells the weather seasons, how it's going to be. But I think it's I'm not quite sure, but I believe it's the badger. Everything you can eat, but a badger you can't eat, because a woman that is going to nurse babies, a young woman, they won't let them eat the flesh of the badger because when they eat something in the badger flesh, it won't permit the young woman to produce milk for the baby that she's going to have. So that they don't let the younger women eat. But and another thing, that over the night, if you run across a badger in the evening and kill it and skin it out and leave that blood, take the insides out and leave the blood on the inside of the carcass overnight. The next morning, if you go and you want to find out how old you're going to live in this on this earth, you go and look into that badger blood, and if you're wrinkled, well, you're going to live a long time. But if your skin is smooth, then you can rest assured that you won't live very long. I know that's for that. And I think it also predicts the winter months ahead. I believe that's, I'm not quite sure, but I believe that's it. I'll have to ask my aunt that. I shouldn't have told it before I asked her, but since you asked about the trails and why we go, well, that's what I threw that in. But I'll ask her and then I'll tell you. I'll write to you and tell you. So that's why they traveled from winter, and they come and through the winter and they have a powwow, and then they start going out to harvest of the year, you know. For the year ahead, hihana, they'll say. Save for the hihana. Well, you never know what's going to happen. And you always have things on hand that you need and not what you want, you know. Nowadays, people want. They don't need it, but they pile up. Maybe they want so that they can help somebody else. You know, that's our main tradition, is to help somebody else out. Excuse me, I'm going to take a bite.
Growing.
No? Okay. Well, so us women, we have in them days, we had my grandmother said we had a hard role as a Lakota woman. We were trained at an early age to learn the art of tanning hides, the skin of any animal, any kind, even the little rabbit we tanned because for clothing. In the winter months, we sew them little rabbit fur and put them on the inside of the any kind of clothing, like the pants and the shirt and little baby clothes, you know. We use that. And we were taught to, if a woman is going to have a child, in the fall of the year, the woman went and picked cattails. You know, those tall reeds that grow in the slough. They would pick the cattails and dry them. And when they were dried, they made a kind of a pouch like this. At the top, they call it yushki around. And they would stuff that with cattail. That cattail is just like it's not a cotton, but it's a, oh, I forgot what they would call it.
Absorbent?
Yeah, anyway, yeah, they would put that in there. And they would look forward to the baby when it's born. Well, they would put that baby inside of that bag, and when the baby and the top part of that, they would make a little raiment. You know, in them days they had no cloth of any kind, so we used skins. So they made a top part of a skin, and they put little fur on the inside for him to keep warm, the baby. And the bottom part, they put that in there. So that was Pampers. Nowadays they have diapers and Pampers. When that little baby wets, it just wet in a certain part. That part where it wets and messes, why it will just stick together in them cattail. And the mother would just reach in there and just take that part that's soiled and take it and put it on the fire and burn it. Nowadays, you see the Pampers laying any old place. They don't respect their baby's diaper that's soiled. They just throw it any old place. One time I raised all my children by diapers, using diapers and, washing them, scraping them off and washing them and using them again. But nowadays they got Pampers laying all over. They disrespect their children. So in raising our children, we had a hard time, but we loved the children in them old days. And the women, the young ladies were taught to pick that for baby diapers. And before they were born, when you knew that you were going to have a child, we were taught to go out into the hills about May or June. Now, in them days, you had to go and pick some kind of they look like toadstool, but they're up this way. They grow this way. And that soft part is on the top. It looks like a flower. Grows out in the open prairies. You pick those and save it, because it's used after the baby is delivered. They would take that umbilical cord and cut it, and then they would lace this brown part. It's cut off of that toadstool-like, and there's only one place that there's a hole, and they pull that umbilical cord through it, and then tie it, and then go around, and that brown part goes next to the belly and kind of cushions it. And that powdery stuff that comes out of that plant, it serves as a cushion, and it serves as a healant. It heals quick. And so the Indian women were taught to pick that, looking forward to the birth of the baby. And so at an early age, we were taught to bring forth life, and they would pick, in the spring of the year, they would pick peppermint tea along the creeks and ravines. They would pick peppermint tea, and they would make the midwife would always have that on hand, or either the woman that's going to expecting would have that on hand, knowing that the midwife would make a tea and have the woman that had this newborn baby, she would make tea for her, and she would give it to her, because that tea would go and push out all the bad blood, they would say, out of her, and she would get healed right away. And she drank that for about 4 days until she got well after the birth. So we were taught, we had a hard life, but we had to know. And some of that tea would be mixed with this Ichachbehuna. How did you say that name of that?
Echinacea.
Echinacea?
Cornflower. Purple cornflower.
Purple cornflower, yeah. Well, she would mix some of that, make that into that tea, and that would take some of the pain from our even while giving birth, while they would give them that tea, and that would serve as a what do you call it?
Disinfectant?
No. Take the pain away. Anesthesia.
Anesthesia.
Yeah. Here comes my daughter. And so they would use that too as a medicine. And all this we had to learn to be a Dakota woman. Stop it.
Okay.
Growing.
All right, and so that's some of the things that we had to do to as Indian women, Dakota women, and we had to. Grandma always say that a body needs to heal for two years after the baby is born. After that, your body is healed, and you get strong, and your blood gets strong. The blood is what really counts, she said, in our physical life. So we have to eat accordingly, like they would make us eat a lot of soups and rare meats, like if they killed a little rabbit or a little deer or something, right away, if it's antelope, they would bring the soup and bring the liver, and they would make us eat liver, raw liver, raw kidneys, because that built the blood of a young mother. Nowadays, they don't do that anymore. So a bunch of us ladies have anemia. I know I'm one to that, because I had about, giving birth to 2 sets of twins, and 11 or 12 of these single births. And I've lost a lot of blood, and I've never did eat like that, like Grandma used to taught us. We just ate what we could get a hold of. So I'm very anemic, and I believe this is why a lot of people are anemic, because they never took care of themselves at the beginning of the birth of children as an Indian Dakota woman. And so these are hard to do, but I believe if we went back to our Indian traditional ways, we Dakota women would be stronger, It sounds strange, but we need to do these things. But nowadays they have blood transfusions, which is getting us worse, by we don't know what kind of blood we're going to get. Maybe we might get AIDS, or we might get something, and we acquire some kind of a disease into our bodies that's not supposed to be there. But in the Indian traditional values of life. We use these animals to help us. Like I told the story of the antelope. The antelope is an animal that goes out and picks out what he's going to eat. He eats mostly sage, and he eats mostly herbs of this earth. And his blood, his body, his flesh is saturated with the natural herbs of this earth. And so the Indians, the traditional people, they believe that the antelope animal is medicine. He's wakan. So like I told before that when I was dying, I didn't eat for 9 days now. They gave me up to die and they sent me home. Grandma Ramsey was praying for me and trying to doctor me, but I couldn't come out of it. My uncle, Pat Ramsey, he's still alive. He went and shot me he shot a buck antelope and took it back. And grandmother went and she butchered it. She cleaned the insides of the antelope and she put the liver. She cut up the liver, the heart, the kidneys, and she stuffed the outside of the inside of that the big intestine of the antelope. And she cooked that, and the little intestines, the small intestines, all the taninga, they call it, she cooked them, and she made a soup out of it. She left some fat in there, and she made a soup, and she cooked the flesh part too. She kind of broiled it. She brought it. And she told me to eat it, and I couldn't eat or nothing. I was just so weak. But when I drank about 4 tablespoons of that soup, I went to sleep. And when I woke up, I was hungry. And so she fed me again. And it seemed like all that day I was drinking soup, and towards evening I got hungry again, which was a good sign to her, being a medicine woman. And she brought me out of that sickness that I had, and that's why I'm telling this. And so we need to know what these animals are and identify them so we can use them and as medicine and as strength for our bodies. So this is part of the teachings that my grandparents gave me, and I learned this the hard way. Almost gone? Or not? Full. So with my life, in my physical life, I learned a lot by just through the herbs of this earth. And I have a deep respect for our Creator, for creating the heavens and the earth and every living thing on this earth that He blessed us with, that He created for us to use for His benefit. And we learn these things, and we have to teach other people about it. This is the Indian Dakota tradition of doing. Teach others about the lowly animals and the lowly herbs We pay a lot of money for drugs that hurt our bodies, but these things that are natural are good for our bodies, and we don't have to pay anything. But if we know what is a herb and what is a medicine, well, then we can use it and use it for the benefit of our physical bodies as well as our people, for one another, to doctor one another with. Is that all right?
That's good.